Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Have you ever heard yourself say something to your child and immediately thought, I sound just like my parent? Or maybe you've had the exact opposite experience. You're working so hard not to repeat what happened to you that parenting feels exhausting and overwhelming. If so, today's conversation is for you. My guest is Dr. Robyn Koslowitz, psychologist, author of Post-Traumatic Parenting, Break the Cycle, Become the Parent You Always Wanted to Be, and someone who is helping parents understand one of the most important truths about raising children. Our own stories come to us into parenthood. She teaches parents how to identify inherited patterns, heal old wounds, and build the secure, connected relationships they want with their children. Her work is grounded in both professional experience and a personal experience as she practices these principles with her own family. Today, we're talking about generational cycles, healing attachment, resilience, and how parenting can become one of the most powerful opportunities for personal growth. Dr. Koslowitz, welcome to the Accidental Experts.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about something that is, to me, is like a newer topic. I feel like I am not as familiar with this. So I'm so excited for you to introduce to us this topic. So we're going to be talking about post-traumatic parenting. And would you start with introducing what that is to us and what it means and how we can notice that or what we need to know about post-traumatic parenting?
Sure. So I feel like there's so much parenting advice out there, and there are so many parents who feel like such bad parents, and they feel so blocked. Like it's sort of like I know what I want to do, and I sort of know that I'm supposed to be, self-regulated, and I know that I'm supposed to, parent from this place of, values and from this place of intentionality. And then when we're running late to the dentist and my 4-year-old takes off his sneakers for the 15th time and throws it at my forehead and it bonks off my head, I just lose it, right? And you hear this from parents all the time, and they're like, I'm just the worst parent in the world. There's just something wrong with me. I swore I'd never yell at my kids. Like I swore I'd never say those things or do those things. And when I've been working with parents for so long, it's always been like, where have you learned that? Where did you learn that after a certain level of stress, you yell, or after a certain level of stress, you give in and do whatever the loudest voice in the room wants, or you lash out before somebody can lash out at you, or you dissociate and you just leave and you check out emotionally? You learned that somewhere.
Yeah.
And the somewhere is probably an instance of trauma, whether it was like a specific trauma, like a discrete traumatic incident, or whether it was a chronically traumatic childhood, you learned that somewhere. And once you see it, like sort of once you see the impact of trauma on our parenting ability, you sort of can't unsee it. And that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me about that. What do you, when you talk about the impact of trauma, right? Because like I grew up in a screaming household. I mean, my parents didn't scream all the time, but like that was the thing that I left childhood being like, I don't want to scream at my kids, which sounds like a familiar thing that we hear.
Yeah.
And but I don't remember, like I think it was my parents didn't know how to get control.
Okay.
Right? Like it was like they didn't know what it was, but I don't know that it felt inherently traumatic, but then also I know that there are people who were screamed at that did feel very traumatic. So like, talk to me about that part about the trauma.
Yeah, I think to me, a trauma is any experience that's too big for your brain to metabolize, that overwhelms your ability to cope in the world, or that you feel really alone in having to deal with, right? So not everything aversive or uncomfortable is traumatic. It still can have an effect on you, but it's not necessarily traumatic. Traumatic to me means this was too big for your brain. And for a lot of parents, for you, maybe being yelled at was intense, but not intense enough to make you feel like I can't cope, I can't survive in this world, right? Whereas for a different nervous system, maybe even in the same family, that would have risen to the level of trauma.
Sure.
So it's not only what happens, it's who it happens to, right? But it's when you say, oh, I don't want to yell, and then you yell anyway, even though you set some intentionality. I know there are parenting practices that my parents use that I don't use, but I feel very free not to use them. I don't feel like I firmly intend not to do this, and then suddenly it's coming out of my mouth, right? Those are not instances of traumatic learning. Those are just, oh, that's a parenting practice that I would prefer to emphasize something different. And I
Sure.
very easily could do that, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, right? But the things where you say, I am never going to do this, and then you find yourself doing this, like your hand, someone who doesn't want to slap, and then their hand moves of its own accord almost. And afterwards, they're feeling like, what just happened? Like, how did
Yeah.
that's when I always say to people, that's not you, that's your trauma. Because to me, that's like an app taking you over. Before you knew it, before you instinctively, before you thought it through, your instinct took over, and that's what happened. That was traumatic learning,
Got
right?
it.
You
Okay.
take control over it. You learned it in a moment of trauma.
What are there subtle ways that trauma shows up that maybe we might not notice that like we're doing? Obviously, yelling is something that maybe is not so subtle, right? That desire to do that. But like, are there other ways that we might notice other things that are happening for us that are more subtle, or just other things that are happening that you're like, yes, that would be trauma?
So in my book, I have like 5 subtypes of post-traumatic parents. And I have like the perfectionist post-traumatic parent. And that's someone who is trying to parent so perfectly that they're forgetting to be present. Right. And they think they're doing it so well. They're like memorizing every gentle parenting script, and they're just trying so hard. And they still feel like I'm missing something. I'm not doing it well. And it's like you're not dropping the perfectionism. There's no perfect way to parent. And maybe moments of trauma in your life, being perfect was a real survival mechanism. It kept you away from toxic criticism. It gave you something you could control in your life. It gave you an edge, maybe out of like a stressed environment. It gave you a way of, promoting yourself and protecting yourself. You can't parent perfectly.
Yeah.
And if you're trying, you're going to burn out. And that's really not great for you or your kid. I
Yeah.
have parents who are paralyzed, right? Who do not trust their own judgment at all. So they're always running to the loudest voice in the room. A lot of times, those are people who are people pleasers, who have a fawning trauma response where they just don't know what the priority is. So whatever the biggest emergency is, that's the priority. But then they never can like finish one task. And it's really hard for a parent like that, right? Because you're over here cooking dinner and your kid's screaming from the other room, Mom, Mom, Mom. And it's not the world's biggest emergency. They want to show you something they drew or something like that. And if you have some confidence in your own judgment, you can be like, all right, honey, I hear you. I'm just going to finish getting this in the oven first, and then I can come help you tie your shoes, look at the thing you drew, see the cool bug, whatever. Paralyzed parent is like, oh, she's screaming for me. She's going to feel really abandoned. I can't do that. Let me leave this stuff, run there. Oh, shoot, I forgot to put dinner in the oven. Now what? Right. And then everything's constantly cascading all over the time. So it's like a lot of frantic motion, but nothing purposeful.
Yeah.
Right? And very often that comes when you talk to a paralyzed parent, you really drill down. It really comes from, I can't trust my own judgment. So the loudest in the room, that must be the judgment I can trust.
Yeah.
Right. And we do that. We have the disengaged parent, and that's a parent who dissociates a lot, right? And is just, you know what? Let me outsource my parenting as much as possible because my damage is so big that it might damage you, and I don't want my damage to ever damage you. So, I'll hire someone to like be a homework teacher. I'll hire someone, I'll outsource the, even things like the sex talk. Like I'll have like the youth pastor do it, or the middle school teacher do it, or, someone else do it, but I'm not doing it myself. I'll hire a child psychologist. The first time I met a disengaged parent, she asked me, and it was not actually a patient, it was a friend of mine. And she asked me if I could sit down with her kids and give them the puberty talk because she's going to mess it up. Like she has hangups around this. She had really bad experiences in childhood. So can you do it? You do this for a living. And I thought, wow, but your kids need you, right? This is like a moment where your kid needs you. This is not something that can be outsourced.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wow, this is disengaged, right? Is like spending a lot of money on their kids' therapy because they're earning all that money for their kids' therapy because let someone else do that stuff. I was very much, very dissociated as a young mom. So that was my story. I would constantly dissociate and sort of feel calm, but I wasn't really there. So
Mm-hmm.
that was, for me, I always thought that that actually was a great trauma adaptation because it was a superpower. Like I could shut off my stress really quickly, but then I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one. I think that a lot of people don't realize dissociation, how much our phones can be dissociation machines, and how that can really derail us as parents. But it's pretty much any time we really want to do X and Y happens, and we really intend to. With like, we wake up in the morning, this is what is going to happen today. And then we go to bed thinking, none of that happened today.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how that happened. That's where I say, oh, there's probably a hidden trauma here. There's an app that's taking over your brain. It's not you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said there are 5 types. I feel like, did we get to 3 and then?
Not 4. I think we got to
Okay.
4, right? We said
Yeah.
perfectionist, paralyzed, disengaged. We didn't say survivor, which is just sort of like people who are in survival mode and they're just keeping the little humans alive, and they're not even post-traumatic. Like in the psychology literature, we might say that they're in acute stress disorder, right? Something just happened, right? You're still dazed and confused. Someone just died. Your house just burned down. And some people can be in that state for 5 years, but
Yeah.
you know, I had someone in the post-traumatic parenting community who said, it was so poignant when she said it. She said, 1 minute I'm living in one state, in one marriage, working in one industry, and then COVID, and I'm in another state back home with my family of origin, divorced. My business completely fell apart. I lost my home. I'm working in a completely different industry, and my kids are 5 years older. Like she's just
Mm,
waking up out of survival mode.
yeah.
She's like, where'd those 5 years go? That's survival mode.
Yeah.
Right. And in those moments, as your business is exploding and your marriage is imploding and, everything's really, really, really going down the drain, you're just making the next right decision and the next right decision. Like you're not thinking long term about like your parenting
Mm-hmm.
style or anything like that. You're just like, wait, where are clean clothes? The kids got to get to school in 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
That's all you're thinking about.
Sure.
And then the last one is the entangled parent. And that's someone who is so tangled up in some sort of a toxic dynamic that isn't theirs. Maybe it's a toxic ex spouse. Maybe it's one of those golden handcuff jobs where, on the one hand, it pays you well, but on the other hand, there's no such thing as at home time and at work time. Maybe it's family of origin. You especially see this with immigrant families, right? Where like the oldest kid who speaks English is the one who is doing all the translating and all the work, and the family just is used to relying on them. And
Mm,
maybe they have a family of their own at this point, and they're still managing their family of origin, and they can't quite get to their own kids and their own
mm-hmm.
parenting, right? But if we look at it in like the psychoanalytic literature, and we talk about like being the container for your child's big emotions, if your container is so full with your family of origin or your ex-spouse, there's no room for your kids, right? There's no room
Yeah.
for their emotions. So that's a really hard one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's complex stuff that is showing up in
Yeah.
and these types of post-traumatic parenting styles.
Yeah.
It's not just getting mad, right? It's something that, like, we've had something happen big in our lives, and then how we're responding to that.
Yeah, and it's not you, it's your trauma, right? It's not
Mhm.
like you're this mean, rotten, nasty person who's just the worst parent in the world, and I hope I saved up enough money for my kids' therapy, right? It's like you really trying, you really want to. Whenever a parent is saying, that their reaction was so disproportionate to the situation, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I should have gotten mad at my kid. Like we all know it is not okay to take off your sneakers for the 15th time when we're late to the dentist, but I didn't have to get that mad, right?
Mhm.
Or I didn't have to. My kid got mad when I said no, and next thing I know, we're $1,500 into this shopping trip. Like, what happened here?
Mhm.
If that's disproportionate, that's where you say, oh, something else took you over. That wasn't you. Like, don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up if that wasn't you.
Mhm. Okay, so I mean, I guess then what do we do if we are recognizing, like, yes, I have one of these post traumatic parenting styles. What do we do next?
So, what I like to use, the metaphor I use in the book is called the trauma app, which is this idea that trauma creates an app in your brain. And the app has a lot of like if then rules, like if stressed, yell. if stressed, dissociate. If someone's upset around me, calm them down. Whatever those if then rules are. First, like really notice your trauma app and sort of notice what your rules are, because our patterns tend to be very predictable. The same kinds of things keep triggering us. Right. When, I was talking to a post-traumatic parent and she's like, I don't know, I just yell when the situation gets overwhelming. And when we really drilled down on that, it was whenever she feels abandoned with a mess that is not of her making, but somehow everyone's dumping their jobs and their stuff on her, that's when she explodes. And we trace that back to like being an entangled parent and being part of a family of origin where she was taking on the parental role as a kid. So she was expected to really take on adult responsibilities. So now as a kid, when like her teenagers are not doing theirs, so to speak, and she feels really abandoned with something huge and she's just doing it all by herself, she gets triggered and then she gets really mad and then she gets really quiet and her kids get upset that she's giving them the silent treatment. But really, if you drill it down, she's dissociating. She can't handle that stress. And so she's just going to like a quiet place in her brain rather than lashing out. Okay, now we understand it. Now we know where it comes from. Now we can start to reprogram it, right? Now we can start being intentional. Like, what would happen if you sat the kids down and you said, guys, Wednesday nights when everyone's like coming home and we have to all run out and get people to practices and the house is a big mess and everyone has their jobs and no one's doing their jobs and then it's all falling on me. I get really overwhelmed. Then I yell. Then I shut down. And this happens every single Wednesday night. Can we be smarter than this pattern? Right? Can we do something differently? How do we change that? Right? And whether we change that by doing something practical, like, ordering dinner instead of making it, or whether we change that by doing something practical, like let's cut one kid activity out of the mix, right? Like, let's cut one lesson out. Or whether we're like, yeah, Wednesday night, the house is just going to look really, really messy, but Thursday afternoon, we're all cleaning up. Sure, but do something different, like intentional pattern. Sing
Love
instead
it.
of, right? Like there's a lot of things we can do to intentionally disrupt the pattern.
Yeah. I think it's just that we just probably don't think about it like that. Like we just are like, oh, I don't ever want to do that again. And then that's as much as we think about it until the next time it happens. And then we do it again. And then we're like, oh man, I thought I wasn't going to ever do that again. But we're not actually thinking like, how do I disrupt this pattern?
Yeah. And I think that's because of shame, right? Like it's so painful to think about it. Once the kids are in bed and you're really like, oh my gosh, if anybody witnessed this evening, they would not think I was like Mary Poppins and Mr. Rogers mixed together, right? They would just like absolutely have judgment words for me. I just don't even want to think about it. And like, it's my time now. I'm turning on Netflix and eating some ice cream, right? Like that's the way a lot of us think. We don't really want to sit down and really examine that data and say what happened, right? Every Wednesday night, right? Every Friday, every time we're around this family, this is how I react. Like we don't want to, because it hurts. Nobody wants to think about anything that makes us feel shame, right? But the only way we can ever grow and change is to look at the data. And if we look at it as a data point, it's just a data point.
Yeah. Like we kind of separate it from ourselves, not make it personal. It's like, okay, here's the data. What does the data say? When do I get upset?
Yeah.
Or when do I shut down? And what are the characteristics that are happening ahead?
And I'm sure you've experienced this in psychotherapy where someone comes into therapy and like, I don't know, you rehearsed in advance what they were going to say to their boss or what they were going to do the next time their partner did something or how they were going to handle a parenting situation. And then they kind of talk around it and they don't want to actually say, well, I didn't ask my boss for the raise. Right? Because it is scary to talk about the time we failed, even if it's like you were tempted to ask your boss for a raise, you almost did. You rehearsed it in your head. You got to his office door before you turned around. That's further than you've ever gotten before.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But people don't want to do that because it does feel shameful. It's like I fell short of people. It's that toxic shame that Brene Brown talks about. That's just the, I am bad, as opposed to I didn't do the thing I said I would do.
Yeah, but then we internalize it. Absolutely. So, okay, something else that I love that you talk about is that your inner child can't raise a child. Can you help us understand what that looks like and when the inner child takes over in real time? Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, so this is something that a lot of post-traumatic parents experience, which is a lot of times those traumatic wounds we have happened at a time when we were much younger. I look at inner child as ghosts of our past self that are sort of lingering. And in the book, I map them onto like the Ericksonian stages if they weren't resolved, right? So like if you did not resolve, you know, competence and you never developed a sense of competence because of whatever was going on in your childhood at that time, then there's a little ghost inside of you of like 6-year-old you is that's like, I am not as competent as the other people. And maybe that means, therefore, I have to be perfect, right? Maybe that means, therefore, I'm never going to try and I'm just going to, you know, chronically under, you know, earn my potential or whatever it is. But that inner child sometimes comes out in response to what your real world children are going through. Like for me, for example, when my kids were little, my husband used to come home and he used to start playing with the kids and like roughhousing and doing all that dad fun stuff because my husband did not have a traumatic childhood the way I did. And I would get so disproportionately mad. I'd be like, it's bedtime. We're riling them up. Or he was on his way into a bath. And I mean, it didn't help that I was a twin mom. So I had like two very squirmy toddlers to get into a bath. Like they were double. But, you know, and I'd be like, let's go. We got to get the food into the kid. Homework time, supper time. Like, we can't waste time like rolling around and playing. And some of that was somewhat valid, right? Like I was the more, very often you have that where one person in the couple is the more let's be organized and let's like, you know, keep stuff ticking. And one person is more like, let's have fun for a minute. Like, let's be in the moment. But when I was so disproportionate about it, I realized something else was going on. And then I realized I was so jealous of my kids because I did not experience that. My father was very sick when I was a child. That was part of the trauma in the book. And so I didn't grow up with a playful, fun, young dad who could like roughhouse with kids. And my inner child was getting really jealous. And eventually I was able to think, well, what do I really want? And at first it was I can tolerate them having fun. But then eventually it became, you know, I can have fun too. Like I can join the game. I can join the fun. And like, so we'll go to bed 10 minutes later. Like nothing so terrible will happen. Especially my kids also started growing up a little bit more. So like the younger they are, I feel like the more you got to stick to the schedule because like you miss the sleep window and then like they don't sleep. But like the older they get, the more you could be like, okay, so if we skip baths on Tuesday night, nothing will happen. Or like we eat a little bit less vegetables for dinner, it'll be fine. But that anger that I felt, that sense of like disproportion, that was my inner child. And what happens is I look at the inner child and the trauma app as like working together. The inner child comes out and it activates the trauma app and it like frantically restores every permission that you just took off, right? And the inner child is like, you know, like, no, do not allow this to happen. This is not okay. You know, a lot of post-traumatic parents will tell me things like, sometimes I'm jealous of my kids, or sometimes when my kids reach the age I was when a certain trauma happened, I feel intense sadness, right? And that's your inner child. That's the, you know, 14-year-old you that wasn't able to be that way, looking at 14-year-old child who is able to be that way and just being really sad that I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And while that's what you wanted, that's also really painful. You know, one of the post-traumatic parenting community members said something that was so true. It's a little off topic to what we're talking about, but it really stuck with me. She said, one of the hallmarks of being a post-traumatic parent is that your kids will never know how lucky they are because they don't even know what they didn't have. Like they won't know that. Like she said, she has never spanked her kids, and she grew up in a home where spanking was not only was it the, you know, way they parented, it was also like a religious obligation, and like they even looked for like reasons to spank when she hadn't done something wrong because spanking is good for children apparently. I mean, we don't believe that, but that's what her parents believe. Her kids were never spanked, so they don't even know what it means to like live in fear of a parent coming home because they're going to look for an excuse to spank me.
Yeah.
Right? Like that doesn't even enter their lexicon. And she was saying like, wow, your kids will never appreciate what, and that's a good thing. But at the same token, like sometimes you feel like, when do I get the credit for doing all of this? Like this is so hard to break the cycle, you know, and the truth is we give ourselves the credit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard. I mean, it is hard to break the cycle that you've been in, what you've experienced. There is that traumatic response to that kind of, like you said, takes you back to that place, even if you don't want to be in that place until we've done the work to recognize it. So speaking of that, when we recognize that we're like in that reacting versus responding, right? So we're reacting to our past trauma and those like trigger moments, what is the first step towards creating change? Like in that moment, can we create change? Is it about it doing ahead of time? Like what's the first step?
So some of it is about doing it ahead of time, right? Like, in other words, setting yourself up for success, controlling the
Mm-hmm.
environment, not the child, right? If every time you're running late, that's the thing that sets you over the edge, figure
Mm-hmm.
out a way to cram less things into a day, right? Like, there
Yeah.
are definitely, if your kid gets super overwhelmed when they get dressed because there's a million toys around, like get dressed in the bathroom, right? Like, there are
Mm-hmm.
certainly ways of sort of like, setting yourself up for success and like being intentional about that. But even in the moment, noticing yourself, when you're noticing yourself starting to become dysregulated, as you notice it, sometimes just narrating it really helps. Like even saying to kids, like, I'm noticing myself starting to feel out of control, or this is really stressing me out right now. Guys, let's
Mm-hmm.
all together take a deep breath, start over, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
narrating the imperfection, super helpful. Simply just saying that, right? I'm starting to get stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's really intentionally disrupting, right? Just like when I feel stressed, I will sing because it's hard to yell when you sing. When my kids come home from school and I get that overwhelmed feeling, I'm going to power down my phone so the temptation of dissociation isn't even there. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
dissociate for the next hour because I set one of those apps on my phone that bricks my phone for an hour. So my phone's not even available, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I need to do to put some friction between me and the response that my brain naturally goes to? Because if you
Yeah.
think about it, our brains are really, really efficient and lazy creatures. What our brains like to do is they copy paste, right? So our brains do like, what would mom do in this situation? And if what would mom do is good, fabulous. Like you just say what mom would say. If mom would say, I'm counting to three, then you say that. If mom would
Mm-hmm.
say whatever, whatever mom would do, you do that thing. It's fantastic. Our brains really like to do that. So when
Mm-hmm.
we're telling our brain to not do the response that it's learned and rehearsed and would like to copy paste, we're putting a lot of effort into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's super effortful. And we have to just know it's going to be super effortful. That means do it intentionally. That means your kids come home from school, don't be multitasking. Don't be on the phone with your boss or your best friend. Shut off whatever stimulation is there, whatever that trouble time of the day is. Expect it to take your full focus. Like, don't parent
Mm-hmm.
and do other things because you can do that if you're parenting by coercion. You can do that if you're parenting with the parenting styles of the 80s. But if you're intending to parent intentionally, then that doesn't work with multitasking and with 40 other things going on. Like,
Sure.
know that it's going to be effortful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is hard because I feel like we are so driven to be in so many different places all at the same time. And even though multitasking is incredibly inefficient generally, we still are driven to do that thing. So it's hard. I mean, like to take a line with yourself to be like, I am going to only be parenting right now. I'm only going to be checking on my kids when they get home. I'm only going to get snacks or whatever it is, like being
Yeah.
very like single minded.
Yeah, it's hard because, especially ever since COVID, I feel like work-life balance has shifted and people do
Mm-hmm.
expect to be able to reach you at home. And, a boss does expect to be able to like text an employee and get an answer. Things changed. And I don't think we were ever able to really put the genie back fully into the bottle,
Mm-hmm.
where, as much as we can make fun of like the 1950s childhood, and there was a lot that wasn't great about it, the fact is, there wasn't even a fax machine, right? You
Mm-hmm.
were at work from 9 to 5, and when you were home, you were home,
Yeah.
right? Now, there was a lot of other things going on, and there were a lot of things that weren't great. But this idea that we're in this multi-connected world at all
Mm-hmm.
times,
Yeah.
that doesn't work well for parenting.
No. Yeah, it just doesn't work well for a lot of things. Like I think even
Yeah,
for kids being able to reach each other outside of school, like in some ways is lovely, right? Like
yeah,
to be able to reach your friend and talk to them on the phone or whatever is good. But that like then bullying behavior can happen outside of the school. Obviously it shouldn't be
yeah.
happening there, but like you at least had a reprieve at that time. So I agree. I think that having more access can actually be more complicated.
Yeah. You know what we used to also have was like there was such a thing as a kid having like their school friends, their neighborhood friends, and
Yeah.
maybe their, karate class friends, right? Or like
Sure.
whatever they were doing on the weekend. And now that all mushes into one because of phones, we're like always hyper connected. So you used to be, and even when I started practicing, maybe like in the early 2000s, you could have a kid who's like not socially successful in school, but
Mm-hmm.
super popular on their flag football team,
Yes.
and or super popular in their D&D group or whatever, right? Or like they have friends in their neighborhood, they have kids they go ride bikes with, and like
Mm-hmm.
so there is where they have their affiliation needs. Okay, so I'm a non-entity in middle school. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it was so much more wholesome for your psyche to be like, okay, this social group is not my social group. That doesn't mean I am globally a bad person or
Yeah.
globally a socially awkward person. I just don't fit
Sure.
in this class, right?
Yeah.
This middle school. One day we'll be in high school. One day we'll be
Mm-hmm.
in university. Things will be different then. In this group, I'm not okay, but my neighborhood friends like me. You don't
Yeah.
have that anymore.
Yeah, you're right. That is a good point to bring up of like it seems like everybody is accessible or with each other at all times. And that happens with my kids too of like, okay, what camp is your kid signing up for? Or what of this, what sport or which team are you asking for? What and that does make it complicated because if your kid's doing well in that group, then great. But if they're
Right.
not, then it definitely makes it hard to find your own space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, if you're talking about a post traumatic parent, if a post traumatic parent dealt with their own bullying or peer rejection or social
Hmm.
isolation or anything like that, see, that's where the disproportionality comes in. If you're reacting to hearing your fifth grade being socially isolated as though you're a fifth grader yourself, like it's
Hmm.
overwhelming, it's the worst thing in the world. Oh my gosh, she'll never have friends again. That's your inner child, right? That's
Yeah.
not you, adult you, saying, like, okay, this group of girls is rejecting you right now.
Hmm.
Let's figure out, is this a skills deficit on your part that we need to remedy? Like, do we need to take some, social skills classes or whatever? Or is that these are just mean girls and mean girls are going to mean girls for a while because that's fun in fifth grade? But let's
Hmm.
just remember that there are other places where you're valued. Let's advocate for you, right? Let me teach you how to answer back when they say those tricky comments that you're not sure are a compliment or an insult. Let's learn how to
Hmm.
navigate these waters. If you're like, oh no, this is the worst thing ever, then that's your inner child trying to parent your real world child.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tricky. Okay, so what happens if we recognize, okay, so it's yelling or our kids having a friendship issue and we keep over responding, right? We're responding like it's happening to us right now. What, how do we move away from the shame, right? Because we know that the shame is not productive, but like we can continue to feel that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I just like so suck at this. Like I'm going to screw my kid up and I keep
Right.
making this mistake.
So I think we undervalue the possibility of repair, right? We
Mm,
forget that, first of all, a lot of post traumatic parents did not have a parent who repaired with them.
yeah.
So we forget that you can always apologize, right? You can always go to a kid and say, yeah, my voice got really loud there. My reactions got really big. I'm sorry. I did not mean for my reactions to get so big. I'm going to
Hmm.
do better next time. And, without sort of blaming the kid for our behavior, which a lot of post traumatic parents will do sometimes, like, well, if you wouldn't have been running away from me, then I wouldn't have had to yell. No, I'm an
Hmm.
adult. I'm responsible for my own behavior, right? We could have a separate conversation later about, guys, if we want this evening to go smoothly, what's each one of us going to take responsibility for? Like, we can do that. But in
Hmm.
that moment, just like, yep, my voice shouldn't have gotten so loud. And even if the kid says something that really breaks their heart, like, it's scary when you yell so loud, and your heart just like shatters into a million
Hmm.
pieces, be able to say, yeah, I bet it is scary. I'm going to work on not yelling so loud. I'm going to work on whatever I need to do. I've actually had that once with my kid where I was sort of starting to lose it, and he was so cute. It's my little 4-year old, and he's like, do we all need to smell the birthday cake and hold in the smell and blow out the candles? We're all getting really stressed out. I said, we are. Yes. Like, thank
Yes.
you for reminding me of that. Right.
Yes.
Like, it's adorable when they parrot us back to ourselves. Right. And
Yes.
like, that's all it is. Yeah. It's scary when mom gets really stressed out. Right. Okay. We're going to work on it. It's
Yeah.
simple as repair.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. We do undervalue that of like we're all doing the best we can. And I think when we learn something, it's good to do better, right? But it's a journey. It's not going to just happen in one moment where you practice a different way or you have a different intention and you're going to probably still mess up. You're going to say something that you would have said or was said to you in your childhood, and that it's like, I'm working to do this different. This is what happened to me, and like I don't want that to happen to you.
Yeah, and I think also I think there's a lot of communicating on social media where, it feels like if you miss your baby crying once in the middle of the night, you're going to like harm attachment forever.
Mm-hmm.
Or, whatever it is that you do, attachment is a lot more robust than that. It's a
Yeah.
survival system. Survival systems tend to be incredibly robust. The one time that you were late to daycare pickup is not messing up attachment irrevocably, or the one time you did lose it and yell and said that thing you intended to never ever say is one time. If you take responsibility and you repair, there's very little a parent can do. And anything that a parent would do that could completely, in one moment, irrevocably ruin attachment are the kinds of things that anybody listening to a parenting podcast don't do, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about like major grievous bodily harm assault, right? There's very little you could do that will harm attachment irreparably forever if you do it once.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good to know. Because I think, sometimes we're like, oh man, I just like mess this up and then it's going to be messed up forever. Or like I've ruined their they won't trust me now. Or right. That we had the opportunity to grow and change. And we're modeling that for our kids, right? Like they're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes.
And all or nothing thinking is very much a trauma symptom, right? That like all or nothing, that tells me, oh, there might be a trauma here.
Yeah. And it's getting really curious, I think, with ourselves to figure out if there's something more to what we've experienced or what has happened that has informed our belief about what is safe or not safe about the world. And how we're responding to that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about breaking the cycle. Like, I love this idea of repairing. I like the idea of like stopping, like maybe even having a breath be your first word, right? Like we haven't talked about that, but like you saying your son or your child who's 4, I don't know if it was a son or daughter, but anyways, so them saying, I have a 4-year-old son. That's why I just projected onto you. So I like them saying to take a breath, right? Like that's good. Is there other ways that we can, like, what if there's defiance? Like they're not listening to what we have to say and that's kind of like triggering us and we're trying to break this cycle and it's partially maybe how our kids responding is responding to our reactions. What do we do to get out of those places?
So I think we also have to parent really from a place of values and understand something, which is I think a lot of people who are embracing a more gentle parenting approach are misunderstanding what it means to gentle parent. Like they're looking at it when their kid feels distressed, they did it wrong. Mm-hmm. When really, sometimes your kids are going to feel distressed. Like in the book, I talk about this idea of R2 parenting, responsive and responsible. You do have to, it's like a seesaw, and you do have to be on both sides, right? So you definitely can empathize with your kids' distress. You definitely can keep expectations developmentally appropriate for their brains, right? So, we're not asking, perfect, decorum from 5-year-olds and sitting perfectly still, for 2 hours or whatever. And we certainly can talk to them about their big emotions and teach them strategies for handling their big emotions. But then there's the other side of there is a behavioral boundary. Right? There is at some point we are going to put on your shoes. Like the sidewalk is hot. And I think I have this kind of geeky take on it, if it's okay if I digress for a minute, but I have this weird, I don't think anybody has ever noticed, which is way back in the 80s, right? Diana Baumrin did that initial study of like the 4 parenting types, and it was like authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive and neglectful. And she spoke about parenting being this like balance of responsiveness and demandingness. And in the 80s, parents made this huge mistake of inserting themselves into the demands. Like, I need to demand this of you. I need to win the power struggle. I totally don't believe in the concept of a power struggle. Like, I think that whole concept is made up. Like, it was a projection of Baumrin's research. Demanding this is not, I'm demanding this of you. The clock is demanding this of you, right? Hot pavements or cold pavements are demanding this of you. The library is demanding this of you, right? Like, it's 7 p.m., it's bedtime. The clock is demanding this of you. Oh man, you don't want to stop playing and go to bed. You know what? At 10 o'clock, I don't want to stop playing and go to bed. I get it. And we got to go to bed because you're going to be really tired tomorrow. And I, as the adult, I am the responsible person in the room that I do have the frontal lobes to know that playing now means bad day tomorrow. You don't yet. That's okay. Your prefrontal cortex isn't yet fully developed. It's my job to be like, yeah, if we don't take our medicine tonight, we will have the same symptoms tomorrow morning. Yes, the medicine tastes yucky, and we still have to take it. Somehow this demanding, this idea that the parent is demanding it of you, that's what 80s parenting was all about. That's like 1, 2, 3 magic, right? I am going to win the power struggle. No, honey, you and me together have to navigate this demand. It really does stink that bedtime comes so fast. I'm like, you'd much rather be doing your Legos right now. I completely get it. And I'm still, even if you're upset and even if you're pouting and if you're like, no, I hate you, yucky mommy, I'm still going to lead you to bed while saying calming, kind things like, yeah, I get it. It's so frustrating. Do you want me to read you the Llama Llama book first? Or do you want me to read you the other book first and then like get you into bed and read you that book and you're going to pout and be sad. And that's okay. That's not abandonment. That's not rooting attachment. That's not making my kid feel overwhelmed with their emotions. That's straightforward me being a responsible parent. It's not the 1980s of be quiet right now because that's disrespectful. But you're still going to bed because it's bedtime.
Yeah. That's I think we're definitely in a debate as to, I mean, I don't know that we're really debating, but we are debating what is the best parenting style. But I think it's everything that I hear about what is working well overall for both parents and kids is about love and structure.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, we can be loving and also still have structure.
Yeah. And I think that we're finally coming to that, right? The idea that we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There was a lot that was done in the 80s that wasn't great. But I really heard a gentle parenting influencer once speak about how putting a kid in timeout is abusive and it's isolating and it's coercive control. But in several posts later, she was talking about creating a sensory safe space for her kid. When her kid gets overstimulated, she puts her kid there so that the kid can calm down. Okay, but that's time out done more gently. I don't disagree. I do the same thing, and I totally believe that. I don't also call it a safe space. I don't call it timeout. But when a parent ever used timeout, and you're speaking punitively about how that was terrible, that's abusive, that's coercive, the parent was attempting to give the kid a time to regulate themselves outside of stimulation, right? It's not abusive. That was an attempt to help a very primitive nervous system that is overstimulated down-regulate, right? I just mean the starkness of the language, or like sticker charts are abusive and coercive control. Sometimes sticker charts done wrong are, and sometimes sticker charts are a good way, like especially when they're like these mini little sweet ones, are a good way of encouraging a habit, right? Like we brush our teeth every day, we put a sticker on the chart, and like the 7th day, like we get something, or we get to watch an extra half hour of Bluey, is not abusive. Maybe it's not the most effective parenting style. Maybe it's not consistent with certain ways of parenting, but it's not abuse. And I think that dark way of communicating about it is really, one of the reasons why also I wrote the book was right when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, and I used to have terrible flashbacks, like full body, real panic attacks that were very much I knew what the triggers were, but they took me over without warning. Sometimes I would hear a loud siren and I wouldn't have one. Sometimes I did. So I sort of knew what my triggers were, but they didn't always apply. And I was pregnant and I read this parenting book, and it spoke about co-sleeping and attachment parenting and how if you don't co-sleep, you are harming attachment forever. And I was learning a lot about attachment theory in graduate school, and like it seemed very important to me. And I remember reading this book, which was written by this person who sounded very sure, happens to be the person who wrote that book is a medical doctor, not a psychologist, not an attachment researcher, but she was speaking so surely about this, like with such authority. And I remember like my heart sinking to my toes and thinking, I can't go sleep with my baby because my baby won't survive the night. Like my nightmares are violent. Like I would not share a bed with me. Like I can't share a bed with anybody because I am such a like violent tosser and turner with like my nightmares are really sudden. I can't go sleep with my baby. I guess she's screwed. Like she hasn't been born yet and I've already messed her up. Like my damage is definitely going to damage her. Yeah. And that was like my initial research. Like I was at NYU at the time and I was a grad student, and I went to like the library stacks, and I was just researching like what will panic attacks do to my baby? Like right now in utero. are my panic chemicals poisoning this baby? When this baby's born, if I don't co-sleep, will this baby be harmed? If this baby witnesses me having a flashback, what will that do to her toddler brain? And there was nothing. Like there was no research on it. So 20, how many years later is it now? 28 years later, that became this book because I couldn't be the only mother feeling that way, right?
Yeah.
Like my damage is inevitably going to damage my filter,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the book just didn't exist, so I had to write it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did because there's a lot of parents out there who definitely need that. Okay, so talk to me about this idea of I love that we've talked about attachment and that it's a forgiving, more robust process. It's not about one experience, like repetitive over and over and over experiences unless incredibly traumatic things happen. And that most of our kids are hopefully not experiencing those super traumatic things and that we're protecting them as much as possible. But also, like, sometimes traumatic stuff happens. And if we're with our kids, right? So, like, we have a house fire and that is incredibly traumatic, but like we're there and we're navigating through and we're supporting them. Does that mean that, like, is that something that we've messed up their attachment or they're going to be traumatized for life? Or how do we navigate those things when we are an attentive parent?
So an attentive parent, I love that you're asking that question because our kids are also going to experience trauma. And I think a lot of post-traumatic parents go through life just like, I don't want my kid to feel the way I felt. And we kind of forget, your kid's not you, your kid has you, right? And that's like a crucial distinction. But the more we pre-digest, really difficult experiences for our kids, and we make them feel like you were saying, not alone with them, so that we tell the story of what happened, we help them break it down and understand it so it's not so big for their brain, then it may be acutely stressful, but that doesn't mean it's going to tip over into traumatic. And I work with kids who are, I do a lot of non-compliance with medical treatment. So I've worked with kids with pretty serious, chronic health conditions. And I always see the difference between the kids whose parents are there throughout it, who are telling them the story of what's going on, who are really helping them digest the experience versus the kids where either it's like shameful and we don't talk about it, or it's so overwhelming that it's too scary to talk about it with mom and dad, where it does tip over into traumatic. I just recently met an adult now. She was one of my first patients in one of the medical clinics I worked in, and she had, I feel like she had Crohn's or colitis or something, but it was pretty severe. She had to have a lot of surgeries, and her parents knew to bring her in. And we would write these sort of TFCBT, trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy books about her experience. She's like, remember the book? To this day, when I have to go to the bathroom, I think, oh, Bobby Bladder's full. Because we had these character puppets of all the parts of her digestive system that we were helping her understand what was going right and what was going wrong. So, and the way she was talking about it was so light and free and joyful.
Yeah.
It was very clear this was a difficult life experience. It's this child that had multiple surgeries by the time she was 5, 6 years old. But it never reached the point of traumatic because her parents were there in it with her so much and getting her the right help, which they, to their credit, realized to do, because I feel like 20 years ago, we didn't realize to do that as much.
Yeah.
But it was painful. It was whatever. She is clearly for the rest of her life going to have this chronic health condition that impacts what she can eat and the medication she takes and her immune system. Yeah. But there was a lightness and, sort of there was a way of talking about it that was clearly integrated into her whole life story. It wasn't this horrible situation that was not possible to deal with. That and you see that difference where really difficult, stressful things are going to happen. That doesn't mean they're going to be traumatic.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying, because I think that's so important, because those are things that there's so much of life that we can't control, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things that just happen. And all of us are going to experience hard things, and it's about having the skills or the support or whatever resources we have at that moment to help us process through and not being alone.
Yeah, which in my book, I actually have a story that happened where I was bullied as a kid, and a lot of that had to do with the sequelae of having a very sick father. So my family was different, and I was very spaced out because I was dissociated. It just made me a really good target because I would just bring a book and read it at recess because I had so much stress in my system that like a book will never let you down. The other kids might say, you come over and say, can I play jumper? But they might say no. But the book, Narnia will always be there, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I was bullied a lot as a kid. And my daughter, one of my daughters, when she was in second grade, she came home from day camp and a little kid was straightforward bullying her, making fun of her haircut, making fun of her clothing, making fun of like her name. It was just like that straightforward, real little girl bullying. And my first reaction, like my inner child took over and I was like, this is over. Like, this is the worst thing ever. She's being bullied. Like, her life is over. Like, I'm already projecting her having social anxiety in high school and her, like life. I was just catastrophizing. Not that social anxiety is the worst thing in the world, but that was my inner child's first reaction. It was like, this is terrible. And right away, my older child said, okay, family meeting, because that's what we do, which is stuff that I had put into place, but I wasn't there yet because I was still having this panic reaction. And we sat down and we had a family meeting. And all the kids were like, all right, when someone says something mean to you, here's how you answer back. When she says, you have bangs, you say, yeah, that's me, I have bangs. Let's practice. And like all the kids, like all her older siblings were practicing with her. And like each insult, we're just sort of breaking it down and like, this is how you answer and this is what you do. And then I said, do you want me to call the camp director? And she said to me, no, mommy, I want to try first everything that we practiced, and if it doesn't work, then you should call the camp director. And like something inside me healed, right? My inner child went, oh wow, you can be bullied and it's not the worst thing in the world. If you have older siblings who are supportive and a parent who has taught everyone this stuff, you'll be okay. And you know what? Then she did end up in the end, like it was getting too toxic. Like she kept answering back and the kid just kept doing it. And like, so I did call the camp director. The camp director, to her credit, like intervened immediately and handled the situation decisively, to the point where the next summer my daughter was going back to the day camp. I said, are you at all worried about being with that kid? And she's like, I almost wish I will be, because I'm not shy anymore and I don't care. And if she tries to say anything mean to me, it's not going to work. Like let her try, like wow. And my inner child really healed.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I mean, our kids can be our best teachers, can't they?
Yeah, right. And your inner child can't raise a child, but raising your real world children can heal your inner child.
Yeah. So true. Okay, so for parents who are listening to this and they're like, look, I've already messed my kid up. Here's where we are. How can we talk about what we can do going forward if we feel like we're already in that place?
I think that's where you sit the kid down and you have that conversation where it's like it's a repair conversation on steroids, right? Where it's, I really didn't handle this well and I really want to start over. What can I do to address the damage? And how do we start over? What do you want from me at this moment? And I don't think it's ever too late. I've seen parents repair with adult children. I've had parents say that to me when their kid's 5 and when their kid's 15 and when their kid's 35, and it's like never too late to repair as long as there's real will on both sides to repair it, right? And sometimes, as the adult in the situation, because even if you're 75 and your kid's 55, you're still the adult in the situation, right? You're the mature one. Then you might have to do more of the work the older your kid is. But it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Sure.
Right? It's just hard work. Yeah. I've done so many family mediations and so many situations where we have like estrangement of adult kids and the parent, and it really does come down to will. Like if the parent really, really wants reconciliation on the terms that will actually help heal the harm, not just on the, I just want you to stuff down your emotions and pretend to be fine with me and show up at family dinners, right? Like that's some parents, that's what they mean by reconciliation. That's not reconciliation. But if it's like, I really regret this. Like I really shouldn't have done this. And I'm really sorry. Where do we go from here? How do I fix this now? I think done with enough sincerity, in most situations you can fix it. Yeah. That real sincerity of I wish, not like, well, I can't go back to the past, kind of like facetiously, but like, I wish there was a way that I could go back to the past and undo that. I would tell younger me, do not go down that path. Don't do this. Like with real sincerity and regret. And I think, again, it goes back to like real authoritarian parenting of like the 50s through the 80s of like parents should never apologize to their children. Why not? Parents are humans. Sometimes we mess up. When humans mess up, the parents should apologize.
Yes. Well, and because it's repair. It resolves things and helps to create healing. And yeah, owning your part is important regardless of what your age is.
Yeah.
So true. Thank you so much, Robyn. This has been such a great conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I feel like we went like all over with this,
Yes, but it
we
was
really
so good.
a lot.
Yes. So
Yeah.
good. I want to leave you with a message that sits at the heart of Dr. Koslowitz's work. You do not have to be a perfect parent to break the cycle. So many parents carry the weight of wanting to do better than what was done for them. They worry about making mistakes, getting it wrong, or unintentionally passing down the very things they worked so hard to overcome. But today's conversation reminds us that healing isn't found in perfection. It's found in awareness, repair, and connection. One of the most hopeful truths Dr. Koslowitz shared is that our past may influence us, but it does not have to control us. Every time we pause before reacting, every time we apologize, every time we choose connection over fear, we are creating something new for ourselves and our children. Breaking down generational patterns doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in thousands of small moments that we choose to parent with intention rather than autopilot. Dr. Koslowitz, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your compassion, and your belief that healing is possible for both parents and children. And thank you to our listeners. If today's conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll remember this. Your children do not need a perfect parent. They need a parent who is willing to learn, grow, repair, and keep showing up. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. The work of a healing family often begins with healing ourselves. We'll see you next time on The Accidental Experts. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.